I think that.
I'm Eliza Walker, first speaker on Fairmont, and you're going to need 2 sheets for this round, 1 for this, and then a piece for the final. I'm going to begin on my first word, which is now. Reaffirm resolve the United States federal government should substantially increase its investment in domestic nuclear energy. Our sole contention is climate. SMR development is being hampered by lacking investment. Goal 25. Small modular reactors, SMRs, are the future of clean energy. High cost and lack of investment slow progress, and they should have been designed and put into commercial operation. They take up a fraction of the space required by wind and solar farms. They are designed with passive safety features. Climate change is worsening. The most recent study confirmed we're on the brink of irreversibility in the next 20 years are Q, IGNIO 225. New studies indicate we have already crossed the Q threshold. Beyond this limit, critical tipping points will be reached, leading to irreversible consequences. Fortunately, nuclear energy offers an effective solution. Hansen 13 confirms global nuclear power has prevented 1.84 million air pollution deaths and 64 gigatons of greenhouse gas emissions that would have resulted from fossil fuel burning. Nuclear energy is key for climate goals. Matthew 22 continues, plants produce no emissions during operation, comparable with wind and 1/3 of solar. Plants can replace fossil fuel nuclear power, reducing CO2 by about 2 gigatons per year. Nuclear compensated 2 years of CO2 emissions. Transition now solves before the break. Still works 21. Transition is less costly if we take action urgently. The longer we delay, the larger adjustments will be and the greater the economic disruption that could make 08 look like child's play. We need to employ investment that will enable us to deal with risks that have rightly been called existential. And this is crucial, as failure to address climate change is existential. Factor 19. Climate change poses an existential threat to human civilization, with governments ignoring the advice of scientists. By 2050, the planet plunges into hotter, deadly conditions. 55% of the global population are subject to lethal heat conditions, droughts, floods, and wildfires regularly ravage the land. Entire ecosystems collapse. Armed conflicts over resources culminating in nuclear war are likely. The human race has 1 decade left. Thus, we urge you to affirm. Moving on to disclosure. A. Enter. Debaters must disclose at least 30 minutes before a round on an open case list PFD. All tagged sites, full text, and portions read of all cards read, in cases drawn at prior rounds on all TFC bid or national championship tournaments on the current topic. B. Violation. They don't. Cards don't include full sites, links to full cards, or full text of red card. You don't know what is missing. C. Standards. Times view out of round. Debaters can't use pre-round prep time to verify sources if there isn't full text and sites disclosed. This gives an unfair advantage to non-disclosing teams. 2. Times view in round. Debaters have to use time in round to verify if they can't full round. This gives an unfair time advantage to non-disclosing teams. 3. Transparency. This is teaching kids to conceal information and hide things. Without sites, debaters learn to only provide information when prompted as opposed to upfront. This leads to the default position that people are probably cheating and this isn't what debate is about. 4. Real-world education. Lawyers have to turn over all evidence and not hold anything back. This is the most real-world situation for all of us because many debaters go into law. Teaching debaters to cheat, lie, and withhold information is only setting them up for failure with the most portable skill debate provides. The Brady Rule is a key example of this. Brady disclosure requires full disclosure of events of evidence in criminal cases. LII 21. The Brady Rule requires prosecutors to disclose material exculpatory information in the government's possession to the defense. If a Brady Rule violation is discovered, the court can either declare a mistrial or prohibit prosecution from using unfavorable evidence which could be discredited by the withheld information. Voter. Drop the debater for 3 reasons. 1. No difference. It's the same as dropping the argument since the argument is the entire case that wasn't disclosed. 2. Norm setting. Voting for us sets a precedent in favor of a positive model of debate. Wins and losses determine the direction of activity. This is especially true at a national level tournament. 3. Dropping them remedies the advantages they got from their abuses and disincentives debaters from not disclosing in the future. Prefer competing interests. It sets bright lines while reasonability encourages judge intervention. Bad disclosure here is even less excusable than at a low stakes tournament because everyone at the TRC is going to be looking at these cases read at this tournament. This is the place where norms are created. No RBIs. Encourages debating. Teams shouldn't just win for following the rules. Our review, Need to answer the next speech to avoid time, strategy, steering, and late breaking debates. Thank you.
We need like. You want, right? Actually, I was 28 when we did it. On the off, the standards. And reasonability stuff. Nobody RBIs. I'll stand about base. The only send with shell is responses to, or just base. That's me. So, send conflict. Is it alright if I send responses and the bottom of the email chain? I know you said you don't want it, but they were just. I don't have it, but I have like Apple. If you don't know. No. No, he has no idea. One is like there's not fun, they shouldn't have it, it's totally done. Oh, that's, I mean, it's like,
You can. Okay, I got it.
no,
Okay, it's fine, it's fine.
I don't have it yet.
Oh,
Sorry.
can you?
Yeah, wait, can you hear it? I'll put, like.
Yeah, can you share?
Wait, no, I don't, I didn't, I don't know, you're good. Sorry.
Oh, it helps, just.
So,
That is so good. At least reduction.
am I good? On the off note violation, we discussed everything that we normally do, have often more for the prior round. In this specific case, we accidentally uploaded our script and sent it to both cars, but we discussed the argument there isn't an intent to hide anything. It's honest error. They never reached out before we round clarification. Their show seemed bad faith, where none exists. Also, our contact info is on the wiki. It's the reason why we clarified to opponents that they can always reach out if we meet interns. We accidentally disclosed it. If they reached out, we would have more than happily sent out the cards. Then on the no abuse, and there's no in-round pre-round at times because they have full activity. Substantive arguments if they're confused, they could have clarified before round. Today's a two-way street. The closing report, that's when people actually reach out instead of sitting on doctors on the standards first. The times to out around, there's no time to our disclosure had all the arguments, tags, and summaries. If they needed the card type, they could have just messaged us to closing wrong. Only works if both has engaged on a minor tech mistake and calling it abusive strategic silence, not real abuse. Second, on the time to in round, they didn't spend any time in round verifying the evidence that they if they didn't try, they ran the shell. If anything, we're being time to by answering a privileged shell over a formatting error. There's no loss crime if they had the core of the argument the whole time. Third, on the very we disclose arguments and I guess they always disclose fully. Once the vote isn't concealed, it's an honest formatting mistake. Calling that cheating dilutes the meaning of the actual bad faith behavior and teaches people, oh, win off technicalities, not debate or real world taking this analogy doesn't hold in the real world. If lawyers forget to attach a document, opposing counsel asks for it, you don't jump straight to sanctions unless there's a willful misconduct. We're not hiding info. We're sharing arguments. Just not perfect card format plus disclosure isn't evidence discovery. It's a community norm, not legally mandated. We literally have the same intro as them. We believe the norm of disclosing. We accidentally just made one technical mistake. You shouldn't drop us for that. Debate is awarded class on technical performance. Reasonability checks abuse. We disclose the arguments and they didn't give us any unfair advantage. That's enough. The interpreter would make any minor tech error or accidental misupload around loss, even when there's no actual impact. That's way too large and turns the debate into a game of trap cards. Reasonability, reading and a reasonable standard. Perfect formatting isn't the same as literally arguing. Reasonability is preferable to competing interests because it prevents frivolous theory abuses like discourages overly uncompetitive shells based on minor tech issues. No voters reject the argument, not the team. Even if you think that there's a violation, it doesn't justify a loss. There only abuses at the theoretical lack of prep. There's only they had all the arguments, so there's no reason to drop this debate. Should be about clash, not tech wins and minor disclosure. It should argue as necessary when the fun to a shell as a technical issue, not excited debate. We're acting in good faith and only disclose the pool by punishing us for an accident with no outreach form. More than a gossip theory. Norm setting works both ways. If you vote on the show, you're incentivizing the team to go for cheap theory instead of debating that works for debate than minor formatting issue. On case. Intention one is accident representing NRC independent companies to skip that. Proof to put on. 45. Some executive order attacking independent agency through the board of regulators to the president quickly and low before the government and the EBCO because Trump has told the NRC proponents pressured the executive to reduce regulation. They wish to react with the agenda to the requirements of any reactors of an act in the entire institution like that. And the Secretary Chris Roberts has their history and it doesn't say how we'll back. And executive right, member the nuclear company application for the NRC which denies the safety right will look the other way and companies valid safety affirming against right key in 45. Additional government support needed to reach cost of secretary and energy need appropriation to enter nuclear risk. After called by the law. That's another. Group 5 2021 studies agency data source for very advanced with group elevation radiation 1,000 kilometers away. Permanent delay alteration or communication with reduced reduction in unit reproductive system that accumulation improvement. 16 416. It's not to be a conflict of biology losses and limited to the species ecosystem provides with the good materials and medicine figuring on the break committee work for collapse with cost inflation, initiate rapid within the environment, influence civilization and human play war, and likelihood of nukes. So Poland wants to proliferate lots of capability, not 25. Poland wants to pursue nuclear plus with the environment that Trump wants to pull back China is defending arsenal Russia and prospect chance of another European state of a nuclear slim. They don't deploy nuclear infrastructure. They strengthen American company once in 2022. Poland awarded nuclear grant to the US bid chose left ago. American power funding only more will allow completion, but 25. No nuclear project in Poland has full financing security commitment from the US. There's still building this in Turkey. US investment got the Westinghouse project started. Phase 1. US government accelerates support for the reactor in Poland. Westinghouse announced layout plan, US CDA fund, US industry government come together. Steps in Poland cause preemption, often 24 stuff that Poland is in the hiding custom budget for operations.
Awesome. Not any proof that you're uploading back there, how do you know that it's not, you're right, if you get called out for it?
Wait, but I feel like every other disclosure that I have on my wiki is properly formatted with every cut card. I'm gonna be really honest, we just got it around with no bar MVP. I kind of just like, I said, oh shoot, I need to disclose, I get it around. I download our file and I realized, well, now I realize that I downloaded the scripting file instead of the actual card file. And then I uploaded it, but every other file on my thing is all cards.
So do you think it's an excuse for one, say it's you runs into a hard team every single round?
No, but I'm just saying it's not a reason to drop me if I made an actual honest mistake.
But we don't know,
But you could have also contacted me before the round.
but that's not what this is about.
I mean,
That-
it kind of comes down to that.
So.
No, you're making it seem that I did a really, really bad thing, super abusive, when my contact info, if you pull up my wiki, I can pull it up right now for you. It says, contact us if you have any interest in me. You could have solely contacted us. I didn't know that I dissed scripting. I could have dissed my cards if you really asked me to. I'll go back after this round and change my diss if it's like that big of an issue. Well, I'm probably
It's
going
not
to.
big.
But like, you could have contacted me. You're making a huge deal.
Not a big deal. Contacting is part of the league.
Um,
You have to disclose everything, you have to disclose in between.
so.
Like the text in between your words wasn't there, it's not just
Yes,
a matter of
I
the length. It's like
completely
you
understand.
can't
I completely understand that, but the thing is, I made a mistake. I'll solely admit to that. Maybe it wasn't an honest, if you guys don't wanna say it was an honest mistake, it was a mistake. Every other round that I did, no, I'm just saying, you guys don't wanna say it's an honest mistake. I'm saying it's an honest mistake, but every other round that I have dissed with Gia are properly dissed. It was a mistake. On our
Were
wiki,
those rounds on national tournaments?
I've only been to national tournaments. I've never been to a state tournament. I went to Golden Desert, TOC Fingies, Apple Valley, Glen, there's ASU, like, and these tournaments I've got bids at. Like, it's not like I'm just going there and going there. Like, I've debated, I've gotten bids. Like, I'm not like, I ran discs before. Like, we literally have the same interest as you. Like, if you go on my team, it literally says James.
That's us in the agreement, why weren't you more careful?
Honest mistake. I'm telling you, like, I don't know what you want me to say. It was a mistake. Like, yeah, I fully understand that I messed up. It was a mistake. You shouldn't drop me because I messed up. Like, if you look at my team notes, Insta, OPJs, email, my email, Gia, same thing. Like, my contact info is there. Yeah, and also, like, if you go into our meeting interns, disclosure, we will disclose all previously broken cases. If you have any intern that is not on the wiki or you want to discuss, please reach out on our contact info listed in our team description, no more than 10 minutes after hearing the release. If you don't want to, if you don't reach out, we meet your intern at this wiki site terminal defense on your show. I don't know why would we do that. Yeah.
What? We're gonna start with off and then we'll look at let's see. Yeah, sorry, I'm not. I sent everything, so it's only gonna be.
The photographer coming on, are you two related or just, you don't relate it? Yeah.
No, it's literally the opposite. Everyone always says we look alike.
Maybe.
No, you judged your sister last round.
Oh, yeah, everyone thinks that three of us are either separate or related and sometimes it's.
I don't know, are there multiple families?
Maybe with your hair down, like maybe with your hat, not covering your hair, you look more similar.
No.
But
not
like
this.
you have really different like
Here's
eye
the-
shapes,
I'm running out,
eyebrow structure, like y'all look. I hate to say it, but like people are just racist, but y'all.
Yeah, I guess it's just a common.
Yeah, it's like a
Yeah,
shock.
it's just.
It's like the last name John.
It's a.
Yeah.
Just a refresher, we're starting on the off and then we'll move over. So, starting, on my first work, which is now, our interpret that all the plates disclose, the debaters must disclose all planned sites and full text of cars 30 minutes before the rounds. They need to disclose the full text for the sites. They said this like could be remedied because they put contact information on the page, but putting contact information on a page does not meet our interpretation of disclosing on the wiki. Don't value it. If they're saying it's reasonable for emails to be placed on case lists, but reasonability is completely arbitrary. Don't evaluate this unless they give you another interpretation. It's putting the burden on us when they're the ones who made the violation. Plus, putting contact info on the wiki is a bad norm for 3 reasons. First, minor safety. Voting for the neg encourages the norm for minors putting their personal information on the internet for anyone to access in a private message them. Debate is a safe place and should be kept that way. This is distinct from email chains because those are between the two teams who are actually swinging around, not the entire open case list that includes random adult, like anyone can access that. Next, ignoring emails. Under their norms, debaters don't have to respond to emails, or they might just never see them. That destroys fairness because it's up to the debater to get their opponent's information. And if they don't, and they won't get dropped if they don't, meaning that there's no incentive to just not respond to emails at any time. And third, lies. They could just send a random doc and you wouldn't know. We literally have to have a way of verifying what rounds they were in and what they were reading. So now we go to standard. First, times view is because like out of round, debaters don't have the time to verify this out of round. They said again because this is like because of the email stuff, but and then also times view in round. They said we didn't spend any time in round like using this, but the round just started. Like even in the future, they hadn't sent us the case. We would have to spend time looking out and verifying every piece of information. Third, on transparency, they say that there's no willful misconduct and they disclose generally. Still, like they still need to be transparent. If we weren't reading this in round, they would not even know that they weren't being transparent. Like reading theory is important. Like for this exact reason, shows people that accidentally violating norms. And then yeah, the real world that many debaters go into law and lawyers have to share all information with the other like side. So on the vote, drop the debater. One, it's the same thing as dropping a case. They read the same case that they disclosed poorly. Next, it sets a good norm that you have to disclose. And like you can't afford to be sloppy. You have to actually disclose the proper information, which is more fair. And third, it disincentivizes like further abuse. For further competing interests, because it's such a clear bright line, there's no judge intervention and no RBI, because we don't want to encourage people to debate out the theory like this. All right, moving over to their first contention. Nuclear energy produces the least radiation and no meltdown time. Rose 18, nuclear releases less radiation than any other source. Coal is a major source of radioactive releases. Even the worst accident is less destructive than other industrial accidents. 3 Mile Island receive only a background dose of 1 milligram exposure from, which is the same as exposure from an X-ray. And also it's a statistically near zero risk. on the way, and the probability of an accident is very small, just 1 in 1 billion per year of operation. This is not a like substantial risk we should be worried about at all. Now, moving on to the Poland convention, nuclear research boosts allied cooperation and reassures Poland, makes them stop reconsider proliferation. Columbia 20. One element of U.S. nuclear energy strategy could be to pursue even cooperation with U.S. allies. The transition is inevitable, but the United States can't, but U.S. can prevent Poland. Home in 29. American leadership is critical to guiding safe use of nuclear energy around the world. Companies are developed to protect and offer safe non-proliferation advantages. Designs rarely need to be refueled. The risk of diversion of fuel is greatly diminished. As growing number of countries turn to nuclear, it is in our interest they do so with safe American-made technology. It will also be subject to U.S. non-proliferation requirements. If they use U.S. reactors, we can ensure that Poland couldn't proliferate with the material they get. Thank you. Yeah.
We're gonna take some. But 1.6, I mean, it was all the way. I'm not excited with it. I'll be off on the 9th and then move on to that.
Are they starting off?
Yeah. Off and then, yeah, out. Is anyone not ready?
Well, I don't know. But once I get them. All right. No. Sorry. Sorry. Sorry, I'm still getting.
Oh, okay, I zoned out, so I didn't know. I wasn't trying.
I tried.
Okay.
I'm gonna take.
I'm happy.
Oh, yeah, sorry, no problem. Okay, once you do it, you can talk over the Zoom. Okay. What I'm doing.
Yeah.
There we go. Okay, cool. Time to start now. On the offer shelves, really silly, there's no voters on the shelf to drop entirely, there's no education regarding basic contact services in the shelf. And it's not contact if you go to the site, anyone can literally contact us if there's an issue by disclosure, clarification issues that need to be addressed before on. So stuff like this doesn't happen. Debaters need to clarify minor issues like formatting, normal communication, and they said that debaters might not see emails, but it's literally in our interpretation that if there's any issues that need to be addressed via disclosure, you can literally reach out and contact us, which means it's our burden to be able to check our emails before round. And they say that we can send random documents not verified, because that's what round reports are for. When we say clarify, it's happening to show we get from our last round email chains, they track back to, there's so many ways you can solve back to that. They say floating meaning is driven. We're not saying that our interpretation is talk to us and fix it. We're saying that there's no real abuse because they have every opportunity to clarify and give that means that the shows strategic malfunction. We actually care about how they should have reached out to us though. Their argument against reasonability is to judges get evaluate credit for that too. And every theory debate reasonability doesn't create very sensitive when drop down to protect their no that's better than they can put formatting the threshold for other people lose routes. And also they say continue to put their answer basically their time because they one bullet points off the lose. Even if our opponents could fix it with a single message that goes education is not so that our standards is disclose arguments clearly and accessibility. We say that they say safety concerns are clean, but we're not asking for personal phone numbers or anything sketchy. If anything, we're putting our own contact info on with our personal choice. Our registered emails are already shared and they're in glass and email chains. Everyone involved is already in the ecosystem. It's not a random internet explosion and the safety really pictures or it's create like private messaging to see, but obviously it hasn't gotten that far. It's not going to be an issue. Then they say ignoring emails is not active problem. I already that's not when I was frontlining. And even if there's violations, it's not by law, so only possible is to zero as the lack of practice. They had all the arguments. There's no need to drop us debate. Should be about clash. But now it should be about clash. Now it's like a reminder for the return to the show. I want to win on the use of show, which restores fairness in the environment. Also to drop the theory at the end of the day for substance and bad on our case. We would say that on accident, it's not responsive for this. We say that under the new regulated administration, we get Trump, accidents are more likely to happen because of the deregulation of nuclear power plants, but also we would say that the likelihood of meltdown increases. They say it's only 1 per 1 billion plants, but that increases the chances of nuclear and increased investment, which means there are more power plants, and they send the following evidence that says even if there's a meltdown of one plant, you see that the entire industry gets shut down. Probably the most important impact in this round. But on board, Group 13 charge, the whole point of the meetings is that there is no U.S. leadership in the first place. This is why Poland is going to proliferate because they feel that they are not backed up by America, but independently go on to their case. We say actions in local sentiment against nuclear waste kills, absolvency, consumer foods. Here's 20. Fukushima is also most dealing with nuclear power countries here like nuclear independent confidence at record low operations 46 of 50 reactors public government information that we decided they said nuclear also meant that nuclear infrastructure Spain is supposed to decided not to build new plants on renewables. We say renewables are solving the climate crisis now, Reference 25. China can transition technological breakthroughs in public economy, clean energy cheaper than momentum driven by not politics but by markets, sectors like renewables and deployment will continue to have been declining possibly not external investment in rising use. Unfortunately, after investment in nuclear energy trades also renewables two boards, investor incentives, 2024. Developers bring multi-billion-dollar SMRs and incentives to run the first possible to recover the cost of themselves and local renewables and block renewables off the grid. The second blocks the grid, Plan 24, nuclear power blocks, renewables integration, flexibility, development, technical limitations, safety projects, replace the and number of making to make more plan to introduce renewable power. The trade-offs of large city renewables are comparatively better than nuclear, but final, which is in their case, 1121. Renewables produce 232 times more electricity. Nuclear power displaces 13 times less carbon per dollar than renewables. And mining nuclear makes climate worse. We also say that SMRs output fails even more, nuclear has market stations, great capacity and diverse investment solutions that they can't solve the climate if nuclear energy is on networks, but also they advocate for SMRs, but SMRs can't be built because the regulatory framework is developed during 25. SMRs are starting to become commercial due to cost and regulatory for use framework, regulatory frameworks undeveloped, and includes by uranium causing radioactive waste and use of energy to reactors, estimated physics, multiple presidential administration for commercial scientific books that can't solve on top of anyways.
It's us all the responses from gardening down. But she liked gardener, but everything the way gardener.
Just tell me what you want. Are you gonna do that?
I just, let me pick one second question. That was 25 seconds.
Okay. You can just.
Okay, I don't know. Okay, so if you guys are allowed to not lose on this because you say it's a minor formatting error, what stops anyone who has anything that like breaks the standard from just saying that like they broke and won't say that they just broke that because it was of a format? Like what stops future people who don't disclose just saying, oh, I sent you my like script by accident?
And the question is kind of generalized because there are a lot of forms that have to be taken into the context of, but we'd say that the fact that our intern is literally the same as yours on the wiki and we've just offered cases in the past was one simple error of one round. So literally every other round has proper cut cards and full cases, just go along with you highlight everything. So we're saying that it's probably going to be a minor error, especially with since the rest of our wiki has full cut cards.
Right, I get that for you, but you like, we generally, if we vote on this, like, if you allowed to win on that, like, isn't that incentivizing if like anyone who has a problem to first try saying it's a formatting error?
Well, I can't control what happens in other rounds, but I'm pretty sure that if there is a format error on someone else's wiki, and they have what like we do, contact info on the wiki that says that you can reach out to not only talk about like or go over like whatever formatting error was being run, but also like go over clarification issues that happen post round, so that in round use like this doesn't happen again. Yeah, but I can't speak for other teams that are further formatting issues. But let's talk about your final argument, specifically your advocacy for SMRs. If SMRs don't have a proper regulatory framework and they can't be built in a proper time due to the fact that their framework is undeveloped, how do you aim to like solve for nuclear energy through SMRs?
Well, like investing in nuclear reactors and putting money in SMRs would make them a much more major technology, which would push that regulatory framework.
But how does putting more money into like SMRs make the United States regulatory framework of the construction of these better?
Well, the reason why there's not that much regulation for SMRs is like not many people are building. If tons of people start building SMRs, then they have to make a regulation. Okay,
but there's not a regulation in the status quo, right? Because that's the uniqueness that we do with our accidents argument that Donald Trump is doing energy secretary are decreasing the amount of regulations that they have on SMR. So why would increasing investment make frameworks better, especially when our government is against like advocating for other frameworks?
Well, first of all, SMRs are like really safe compared to other like the risk of reaction to like an accident as well.
But when we increase investment, it's not that we just increase investment in SMRs, we're increasing investment in the entire nuclear energy industry.
Yeah, but more attention to nuclear energy industry will like necessarily be for more like necessarily need more attention. I'm sorry, that's fine. Yeah, we're good.
Sorry, who probably don't know. Time. They must go 30 minutes before round on open place list carefully, do all tag sites, full tag and portions, read, all cards read, any cases run a prior round on all TFC bidder national championships and it was on the current topic. They have not done this. They have not displayed the full mix of cards or their way sorting the article. The simple accident is not enough. They admittedly made a mistake, and in order for the rules of debate to be preserved, in order for to prevent mistakes in the future, especially on accident firm, they cannot win this debate. Simply stating contact information is enough. It's completely arbitrary and bad enough. We now change our between two teams of debaters, not the entire open case of style adults and all judges can act this. So this isn't a viable excuse anyways. It also leads us into a what if scenario because we don't know if the debaters will answer the emails and it still causes the time to. They state that it is their burden to respond to emails, but if it was their burden, if it was also their burden to fully disclose the case, how can we trust this? If people can get off on a minor formatting error, what is stopping anyone who breaks the standard from saying it's a minor formatting error? They could not answer this question. On to the first convention of accidents, security reforms are coming. DOD 25. DOD issued a $900 million to support SMRs, funding de-risk SMRs. With the NDCA to incorporate safeguards and security addressing key gaps. Safety is not going to be neglected, and by diversity laws may not occur because reforms are occurring and have been by the U.S. Department of Energy less than a month ago, $900 million. Now, vote on climate. The lead 25 finds SMR development is hampered by lack of investments. This is crucial as the 235 enhances their team find climate disaster has come to a critically tipping point and that nuclear energy is the most effective for carbon emissions. Not between two furthers that nuclear energy is continuing to time before, and thankfully, still works fully on climate transition can now solve before the brink of a climate disaster. Action is crucial as 2019 concludes climate change is an existential threat to humanity. 55% of the population may suffer lethal heart conditions and armed conflicts in the near future from rising temperatures and lack of resources. Putting money into SMRs will improve the US's framework and regulations for SMRs. SMRs already have a lot of safety measurements in place, and they are thought of as the most groundbreaking nuclear energy so far. So if the US invest money into them, SMRs are what the money is going to go to, and safety regulations will going to be in place. Now, please weigh on, if you're not going to weigh on theory, please weigh on scope. We are affecting so many people. Climate change takes over the world, and climate change wins. Nuclear is not put into place. It will cause the extinction of many people, cause lung cancer, heart cancer, and it will destroy the world.
Top shelf over theory, case swing this. So top shelf on the theory, are case swing this. On theory, the round is simple. They didn't reach out. It's terminal defense on their shell. There's no motive on the shell, so you have no idea what you're voting off of or why you're voting on the shell in the first place. We make it simple. You know I know you like disclosure, Joe, we messed up, I dissed improperly, but every other round I've dissed proper, that's. Just proper to their shells, they could have reached out and they could have reached out in our sites. It says that if they don't reach out, it's terminal defense on their shell. At that point, they have no voters or anything to go on to. Go to case, the theory debate was really easy. First, they don't extend any case in the last speech, but then let's extend our case, Trump order weakness, or Trump order weakness, the entertained defending lending companies, those statements that nothing including between food chain with Chris Rice, has a record of ignoring safety, affirming getting funding to push risky causes. One aspect to shut down the voluntary industry and trigger global radiation threat funding limitations and researching clouds that leads to biodiversity loss, research loss, and eventually civil extinction. On their only response statement, security reforms are coming. That doesn't matter because in the status quo, security reform take time, and insofar as the status quo, Trump has already assaulted the energy and proponents like the executives to reduce regulations in which reactions be exempted from requirements of any reaction subject a accident the entire industry will be shut down. That also that response was brand new, and they massively messed up when they could see the independently accidents turn global sentiment turning against nuclear, which kills us solvency. Fukushima approved. That means that there will not be any climate solvency in the first place because when you accidentally occurs, the US will shut down their whole entire nuclear program, and other countries will follow suit. There's no impact of climate solving in the first place. Only weighing. First, we would say that the short circuit. After we get any impacts, any access to the impact of the NDCA perception link is conceded. That means that they don't get any knowledge scenarios, and everyone shuts down their nuclear plants, and the whole entire nuclear US nuclear power plant industry will be shut down. They don't make a good response saying that no one or existing regulations solve back, but these regulations are declining the status quo, etc. Basically, reading evidence for us, you're earning neg there, but then only time for perception is immediate. Won't co-opt any of their time scenario based on SMRs being built, but insofar as SMRs risk accidents, you're voting there, but then on the probability, Trump is decreasing regulations right now, making accidents more likely with increased investments. If you add more dice into the pot, there's a higher chance of voting mistakes. That's exactly what occurring when you affirm you have an unproven SMRs being built, which means that there's a higher chance of an accident occurring. On their case, they basically dropped everything that GR reasoned or bundle on the renewables. They conceded all of her responses across that November 25 from case renewables are solving right now. Trump couldn't kill the transition, and tech breakthroughs are allowing for rapid scalability. Cross up are 2 warned from Sussex 20 and that nuclear is incompatible with renewables due to investment incentive to make large construction costs and their large scale energy to make the grid inflexible, and the same thing that countries with high GDP per capita, which applies to the US nuclear production causes a lesser drop in CO2 emissions. Renewables can further evidence a longitudinal study over 25 years with 100 countries making a broader scale than theirs. It's second, it's also the World Bank International Energy Agency data, which has trusted organizations to make the data more trustworthy. Also, our 1121 evidence quantifies that nuclear power spaces 13 times less carbon per dollar than renewables prefer. It's specific to the US, and the author has advised major firms and governments for 49 years in 70 countries. At that point, you know it's clean. You're going to be voting for half votes. I mean, for next, sorry. Voting Fairmont. Yeah. Are you going to come? Let me ask you another question.
Is there a rule, is there a rule that you have to comment something that can really say? Is there anything that says? There's no rule that you have.
But it's a norm.
Either, like, no. I think it goes a lot simpler than that, right? There's no rules for anything that, like,
You have
has
to
to do with the
disclose.
wiki.
Yeah, it's all just norms, right?
Yeah.
The wiki is a norm. Contact info is a norm. You want to promote good norms. If you want to promote good norms, you should contact us.
But it's
We
also.
would love to promote good norms. If you look at my open source, if you look at the open source, half of my round reports say I love like promoting good norms after I read this from the team. I fully support reading good norms. I messed up. You should have contacted me if you wanted to.
But it's also, it's not even that our contact info, it's just like type it wants to go. If you go to our sites, it says that if there's anything like any around there,
Clarification.
or issues with our disclosure, you can always reach out before round at any time. It's not even before round. Anyone can still take and contact us if they notice that there's an issue with our wiki and they want to access our products. But it's not accessed by everyone else, anybody who asks. Okay, but
Yeah, but
once they ask, like
once
it's
they
changed
ask,
and then it's accessible for everyone.
not really. If it's just like a minor
If
mistake.
it's something that can be solved for, it's prevent that might not. No, exactly, but we would have.
Well, we would have
had
sent
to
it to
reach
you,
out. There's no abuse would have happened
If you reached out.
yeah, if you had reached out. But if we reach out, that's just 2 people out of all the other people who might be looking at.
Yes, and
But
we
they
wouldn't
can reach, they can reach out too,
Yeah.
if they wanna access what.
And
we-
I-
I mean, I'm sure someone would have.
I'm sure someone would have told us. Yeah, someone would have ran either shout.
But if we don't,
Not- not
if we,
important security right now.
Yeah, the fact that we're running theory on you right now is the thing that reminded you that you broke the norm and that will cause.
But you also emailed us beforehand, and that could have told us that, okay, we need to fix our disclosure.
But like,
There's no, the reason people run theory is to promote in-round, or like to prevent in-round abuse, right?
Yeah.
And incentivize participation in debates to make it more fair, right? But we don't really have any abuse happening because we just, one, misdisclosed, but also our past, like,
Yeah,
rounds,
every other
history proves that we disclose, like, we disclose every single round. But also, like, none of this would have happened if you had emailed us or like contacted us via like either phone numbers or Instagram in multiple ways, and then we could send you our contacts. Yeah,
my answer's on. I'll go for it too. But like also, I think it's really silly just talking about like disclosure, because there's no voters that should be on Michelle, so she doesn't know what she's voting on to begin with, so like.
and the doctor doing their own, none of us went to that.
Yeah, you kind of just like assert it, but there's no warning, that's like why there's no why the eyes, why the doctor, why the thing, so it's kind of just like a watch. Like, but we just so it's easy, yeah. That's basically.
We give any questions.
All right, we're gonna take the last, this is a quick off-time roadmap. This is a quick off-time roadmap. I'm going to, talk, I'm gonna, focus on theory at the beginning, then we'll talk a little bit about case. Um, so- Now, our interpretation, the debaters must disclose all PAC sites and full text of all red cards 30 minutes before the round. We both agree that this is like, this is a strong infer. Alright, their violation, they didn't disclose these, any sites or the full text of their cards. They say this is by accident, but don't let them get away with this for 2 reasons. First, anyone disingenuous can just say that anytime they're caught in a violation, they can just say that that was a mistake. And it gives more leverage to people to be disingenuous. Also, it says that the normal information is being asked for, which sets people up in the position like where they can be cheating. They talk about like contact information, which we can email them, but contact information is a terrible in the norm. It endangers minors. Evidence isn't freely available. They can ignore information. They can send us incorrect information. The only way to have true, like full flow information without endangering anyone is to just put the information on the wiki. They say it was by accident, but if a soccer player commits a foul by accident, it's still a foul. The best way to preserve the rules of PF is just to stick with the like existing norms. That gets away from any like inconsistency or like anything. All right, let's talk about the standards they break. First, time skew. They have like you don't have time to verify information out of round. Also, in round, no time to verify information. And in real world, a lot of debaters want to become lawyers, and lawyers have to turn over all their evidence. So they kept mentioning how we don't have many voters, but we have like several voters. First of all, we talked about norm setting. By doing this, you're setting a good norm Like, and not just bending the rules when people say, oh, I made a mistake. By voting them down now, we're setting that this norm has to happen all the time. Dropping them remedies the advantages they got from their abuse and de-incentivizes debaters from not disclosing in the future. And like no RBI, because it encourages debating. Like teams should just win just for following the rules. And they wouldn't have even known that they like hadn't disclosed properly because you didn't run the theory. Like voting this up incentivizes us to like run this anytime someone breaks the norms, which enforces the norms. Thank you.
Okay,
I mean, you can tell me something. What is the off, and then it'll be like rain, and then I'll be there. Is that good? There are no voters on the shelves, don't listen to the shelves again, but we said we don't know what you're voting for in the first place, you know what was a mistake, that we missed disclosed, they can contact us from around. There are many ways that we can solve the shelves, prevent it from happening. But no one said he's a voter, no one said an old officer, there's an actual abuse, you can't vote to set a norm when nothing bad happened, you're just asking me to punch the team to report out of the state, not just like some build the norms, the bills of fear of reason over time. And their own senators here passed the ballot, and zero turns up because they didn't extend climate change and finally drop all the responses that are unrenewable sources, turns their climate argument and conceded the position of that says that any form of reactor accident will just shut down the entire US nuclear industry and every other country in the world because it is a global effect of the nuclear program that means that there's no climate solvency abundantly short-circuit their entire case, they don't interact with the way, but extend accidents. Trump's order means that next independent drug companies skip safety tests, specifically behind the like this is record in one state and funding to push this new project, which means one accident each other with the entire industry today, global radiations, communications, and ecosystem policies, biology laws, research, environmental stabilization, extinction, but go to the way. The next is I haven't time because perception is media. We go up to any of the scenarios and we're looking at SMRs and climate studies because as soon as you implement SMRs, the vote will see the likelihood of an accident, large scale, unregulated production, and the drop of chemical evidence that tells you that just because an industry crop which probably has the biggest scope in the round because you see that the radiation and other investment go global. But on the probability, Trump is decreasing regulations now, which makes accidents more likely with increased investment, especially with Chris Wright, who's a history of deregulating for really the energy secretary. They have no offensive defense on either side of the flow. You internet on their basics, send that SMRs don't have any regulation. It's something that SMRs will not only likely cause accidents, but will not be connected, but also. I just want to point out that I don't want to be a lawyer one day. I want to be a surgeon, and Jace wants to be a professional dog walker, and so I think that not all debaters want to be lawyers. So that's what I'm saying.
Okay, this was a fine debate. Everybody comments for Fairmont. I think the negative is recently disclosed. This disclosure theory shell is exactly my problem that I have with disclosure theory. I generally begrudgingly vote on disclosure theory because I think disclosure is good, but this round did not need to happen this way. Points reflect that. I will vote to endorse disclosure, but this is just like a silly violation. They clearly made a mistake, not a maliciousness disclosure. All previous disclosures they've done are properly done. They also have stuff on their evidence to say, on their wiki to say, hey, if we make a mistake, please contact us to fix this. You said that the norm of people putting their emails on the wiki could be bad. You've not said why you can't email them once their email is already on the wiki. So you have just no defense to this. So like, we legitimately made a mistake. Why didn't you email us? I have no answer to that. Furthermore, I'm really not a fan of the insinuation that they or other teams are lying when they accidentally misdisclose. Like if someone puts the wrong doc to assume that they're being malicious, it's just like mean. And kind of like assuming the worst in people and not something we should do. But most importantly is I don't think the affirmative can explain what the negative did that hurt the affirmative in this debate. Why did you need to access their URLs? You are acting like they disclosed nothing. They disclosed their whole script of their constructive. You had their whole page, just not the URLs. So your offense needs to be why, here's why we need access to the websites, not here's why they didn't disclose. Why couldn't you contact them for disclosure? Not why is the norm of emails on the wiki bad, because their email is already on the wiki. You know, there's nothing that can be done about that. they're not telling you to put your email on the wiki, they're just saying, hey, ours is here in case we made a mistake, so you need an answer to that defense. Furthermore, it's like their intentions were just like standard and predictable, it was, you know, pulling nuclear development with Russia stuff and accidents, you know? So you gotta have something about why what they did was unpredictable, why